Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the 2019 Jamestown Mayoral Candidates Debate presented by the Reg Lenna Center for the Arts, WRFA Radio, WJTN Radio, and Western New York News Now. I'm your host and moderator, Jason Sample, WRFA Public Affairs Director. Our program features the three candidates for the 2019 Jamestown mayoral race. They are Councilman Andrew Liuzzo, Eddie Sundquist, and Dave Wilfong. Mr. Wilfong is the endorsed candidate for both the Republican and Conservative parties. Mr. Sundquist is the endorsed candidate for the Democratic, Independence, and Working Family parties. And Mr. Liuzzo is the candidate for the Libertarian Party. Also joining us as part of our media panel is WJTN News Director Terry Frank and Western New York News Now News Director Justin Gould. Our program is being broadcast live on WRFA 107.9 FM and is also being streamed at WRFALP.com. It is also being video streamed live on the WNY News Now Facebook page. In addition, it is also scheduled for broadcast at noon on Saturday on WJTN 1240 AM and 101.3 FM. For the next hour, myself, along with my two colleagues, will pose a series of questions focusing on the City of Jamestown and the Office of Mayor, giving our candidates an opportunity to respond in their own words to the questions as well as to one another's responses. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds for an initial response to the questions. After each candidate gives its initial response, they will then each be given up to 30 seconds for a rebuttal, if necessary. Each time a candidate runs out of time, our official timekeeper will notify them with the following sound. They will then have 5 seconds to wrap up, at which time I will cut them off. Later in the program, each candidate will also be given the opportunity to ask one question for each of their two opponents, and there will be opportunities for rebuttal then as well. We are bringing you this program from the newly opened Reg Lenna Media Arts Studio, and it's being broadcast in front of a live studio audience. However, due to time constraints, our audience members are only here as they observe, and there will be no opportunity for questions. Now, a meet and greet with the candidates will take place following the conclusion of our program. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming here, and please welcome our candidates this evening. We will open the program with an opening statement for each of the candidates, and we'll also provide an opportunity for closing statements from each candidate at the end of the program, and they each have 2 minutes for their opening and closing statements. With that being said, we have done a random drawing of order to start our program, and Mr. Wilfong will go first, followed by Councilman Liuzzo, and then Mr. Sundquist. With that being said, let's begin with our opening statements. Mr. Wilfong.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank WRFA for holding this, and I'd like to thank you folks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come down and to listen to the candidates. It's extremely important in a small town like ourselves that we have public debate and we have public meetings, so each one of you can come out and actually meet the candidates. Like I said, my name's Dave Wilfong. I was elected to the county legislature in 2013, serving District 11 in the city of Jamestown. I was reelected in 2015, 2017. I currently serve as the chairman of the Health and Human Services Committee and vice chair of the Public Facilities Committee. I presently am a cleaning manager of Tandem Solutions in Olean, New York. We specialize in commercial cleaning and concrete finishing, and I currently supervise 56 people. I'm an active leader in the community. I'm also a board member of the Baby Cafe. I'm an Army veteran serving from 1978 to 82. During those years, I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers in Louisiana. I'm a graduate of the Jamestown High School. I hold a building construction certificate from the New York State. I've acted as a construction manager for Tandem. That's the business in Olean, New York. And I live at 39 Norton Avenue, and I'm married to Beth Wilfong and my daughter, Casey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Councilman Liuzzo.
Thank you. If you've been following my campaign over the past 2 years, I keep talking about neighbors being better neighbors. That's the cornerstone of what I want to build on. If we don't take the time to look to our neighbors and be more helpful to them, we are not going to address the issues that most concern this community. 30% of our population lives below poverty. That means our children live below poverty. It's up to neighbors to look out for those kids. We have a high population of elderly people here. It's up to the neighbors to look after the elderly. We have to start small in order to grow big. There are jobs available that our community is not equipped to handle. We don't have a lot of skilled labor in our community. So we need to find jobs that they can do so they can retrieve their pride and dignity, which has been taken away by the lack of jobs. You've heard me talk about repurposing factories. Whether we put in hydroponics, community laundry, cold storage, or start building prefabricated houses, these are jobs that our population can handle. This is a step for them to get back into the fabric of our society and our community. I want to encourage all the cultures that are here to get integrated to our community. We need to encourage everybody to take part in what we have. And that's only going to happen if we become better neighbors. Better neighbors, better neighborhood. Better neighborhood, better ward. Better ward, better community. Better community to our surrounding community. From there you get community development. From there you get economic development. And then you get jobs.
Thank you, Councilman Liuzzo. And now, Mr. Sundquist.
Well, I want to thank WRFA, WJTN, and Western New York News Now for having us here tonight. This is probably one of our last biggest debates that we have, and it is great to be able to share with everyone. My journey starts actually as a Jamestown native. I grew up here, and like most young folks, I left to go off and get an education and to see the world. I ended up in Philadelphia as a teacher where I taught middle school science to kids in the court system. And I got the opportunity to come back to Western New York and go to law school at the University of Buffalo. Now, while I was there, I got the most unique opportunity of all, which is to come back here to Jamestown and work for the law firm of Lewis & Lewis, where the last few years I've been practicing as a real estate and business law attorney here in Jamestown. I, as a young professional, came back to Jamestown and invested in this city because I believe in the growth and the potential that we have. My vision as mayor is to develop a city for the future. I want to position Jamestown as a hub for manufacturing and information technology. Even JCC is starting to teach those courses. But we cannot forget about our neighborhoods. We need to strengthen our housing initiatives and support the neighborhoods we have by aggressively enforcing our housing codes and holding our slumlords accountable. But let's not forget those folks that are also just living in their home and living by their means. I want to pilot a tax credit incentive to encourage our homeowners to make the necessary improvements they need to their homes. Make no mistake, there are challenges ahead, but this city was built on grit and determination, and we need to spearhead creative solutions to address our tax-stressed city. My vision as mayor is a city that we collaborate with our partners, our neighbors, our businesses to revitalize our economy, and together we will move Jamestown towards an exciting and innovative future. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sundquist. It's time now to begin the questions from our panel. We will begin with the opening question from WJTN News Director Terry Frank. Terry?
Thank you very much, Jason. Good to work with you again, and Dennis Drew and everybody here at WRFA FM. And special thanks to those people who are in the audience and listening to this broadcast either live or by tape delay. You're taking a very important part in our democratic process. Our first question actually is for everyone, all of the candidates. The city's current mayor has touted his administration for the job they have been able to do in terms of working to hold the line fiscally. Obviously, selecting a good team to work with the new mayor will be a key for them. What kind of people are you looking for to surround yourself with as mayor, and who do you believe will be your most important appointment?
All right, we'll remind you again that you have 90 seconds to answer the question, and each candidate will have the opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal, and we'll begin with Councilman Liuzzo.
If I really believed that we were fiscally sound and that the city was on the right track, I wouldn't be up here tonight asking for people to vote for me. I think that there's a lot of improvement that has to be made. Living paycheck to paycheck for a family is tough. Try living paycheck to paycheck and try to run a city. That's a lot tougher. We have not taken the time to focus on the areas of the city that needed the most attention, and that's our neighborhoods. The food deserts that we have in our neighborhoods. You know, the downtown looks great. That's not helping the everyday citizen that's here. I think that they have, in a lot of cases, just given up. They have a sense of despair and a sense of what's the point and what's the use? Everything's going to be the same. I want to bring some hope to that. I want to say to the people that it's not we're not hopeless or helpless. We have to pick ourselves up on our own. You want to know which department, what appointment would be the most important?
Yeah. What's your concept of a good team that would be at City Hall?
A good team would be new people. We have 3 that are going to return on the city council. That's a given, they're running unopposed. And their experience should be recognized. But I think you need new ideas. And you need people that are willing to work together for a common goal.
Thank you, Mr. Liuzzo. Mr. Sundquist?
Well, in my administration, I want to ensure that we have people that are not only going to be bright, but they're innovative and they're empathetic. One of the biggest things I want for all of my appointments is to make sure that they are listening to the things that our employees, the people that are on the ground, are saying, and they take those ideas up and try to implement them. Now, I've been to almost every department in the city, and I'll tell you what, our employees have some great ideas to make our city government more efficient and more welcoming. And what I want to do is make sure I have the right appointments. They're going to talk to each of those employees, understand the ways and the goals that they have, and can actually implement those in our city. I want to make sure that we have a city that is efficient, welcoming, and open to all of our residents. And I've also said, and I will tell you all now, that my goal when I win is to have a transition team of people that are not going to be part of the actual government, that aren't going to hold position heads, but are there to help find the best people for the job and to engage the community to make sure our priorities are met as a city going forward. Now, you asked which position is probably going to be the most important. To me, it's that Department of Development, because I want to make sure we have a development director that's out on the road, that's going to actively market our city and the assets that we have and bring in business here.
Thank you, Mr. Sundquist. Mr. Wilfong?
Well, in a Wilfong administration, I believe we've got to put business first, and we've got to put business first in the city of Jamestown. There's not going to be any more political appointees. I want business people running the BPU. I want business people to be engaged in City Hall. I think it's important. I think the city of Jamestown's going down the wrong path. I think we are not business friendly. We are commonly told that we are, but I do not believe we are. I do believe that the most important person as an appointee goes is also the Director of Development, because I want to make sure that we know what's going on in the city of Jamestown, and we know that we don't. We've had businesses move out of the city, and the current administration said they didn't even know what was happening. Where's the Director of Development at that? The current Director of Development is not engaged with the Chautauqua County IDA. They're 5 blocks from each other. You've got to be kidding. Where is the business plan for the city of Jamestown? In the Wilfong administration, it will be business first, so we can increase the tax base, so we can lower taxes, we can bring jobs here. That's what the city of Jamestown needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Councilman Liuzzo, you do have 30 seconds if you would like to follow up or offer a rebuttal.
I just would like to ask, what you think makes Jamestown attractive to outside business. Our gateway streets, the houses on those streets are in terrible condition. 30% of our population is living in poverty. What makes you think that somebody's going to come here and put in manufacturing or become the hub of technology? If we don't take care of our people first, none of this is going to happen.
Mr. Sundquist, you have 30 seconds.
I actually, my question is, well, I shouldn't say question, my rebuttal is, it sounds like Mr. Wilfong wants to just abolish all appointees of our city. I think that's absolutely crazy. I mean, we need to make sure that we have strong department heads to run our city to keep us moving forward. And I want to make sure that those department heads are people that are qualified and able to do the work that we need to move our city forward.
30 seconds, Mr. Wilfong, if you'd like to use them.
Sure. I believe in the opportunity, and I believe what I see in the good of Jamestown. I believe that the neighborhoods are a symptom of the economy that's going on in the city of Jamestown. It's not the neighborhood's fault. It's the symptom of the poor economic times that are going on in the city of Jamestown. Everybody wants to fix up their house, I believe. But by the time you have to pay your taxes, pay your rent, pay all your bills, you just don't have the money, because I think we've invested ourselves too heavily. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to another question, and this time it'll be posed by Justin Gould. Justin?
Thank you, Jason. Gentlemen, as you are probably aware, the Jamestown Firefighters Union has launched a public awareness campaign addressing the lack of personnel within their department. What solutions can you offer to address the staffing problem?
We'll begin this time with Mr. Sundquist.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what I told the firefighter union when we all went to speak with them. I think that we need to have more manpower, making sure that we keep our residents safe, just like we need more manpower for our police force. You know, we are a growing city and we want to make sure that's there. And when we talk about ways that we can fix that, well, take a look at what other cities are doing. Buffalo just got a multi-million-dollar grant from the federal government to add more firefighters. There's no reason as a city we couldn't be looking into those things. We also need to recognize that all of our departments have to have goals to perform better. What a lot of people haven't realized is that our professional firefighting operation in the city has actually slipped in its rankings for insurance services. So that means that if it slips any more, everyone's actual insurance rates, their premiums, is going to go up. So we need to make sure that we are working actively with our firefighters that are on the job to increase that rating, to make sure we have manpower, to make sure that we also have the equipment that they need to save lives. So my goal is to work with them and to also find grants and other opportunities to make sure that department is fully funded.
Mr. Wilfong.
One of the things I think we've got to do as a community, I hear all the time that the reason the city of Jamestown is broke is because of the police department, the fire department. That's not necessarily the case. I think we got to stop villainizing those folks. They're out there, they're the front lines for fire protection. They're the front lines against crime. We've got to take care of those folks. They're hardworking individuals, and don't blame them for the amounts of money that we believe that we owe them. Blame the system. They're hardworking people, and they deserve to be heard, and I think that's a great thing. I want to support the fire department and the Wilfong administration, and I think that we all, as a community, need to pull together and show some respect for both of those lines of work. I think, as we spoke to the unions themselves, I think they're very frustrated with the current situation that's gone on at City Hall. I think that they don't believe that they are valued at City Hall. And we've got to stop that as a government and actually as a community. Thank you.
Councilman Liuzzo.
I hope you understand that there's only so much I can say about this because I'm a sitting council member, and I can't say anything publicly that could be misconstrued that I'm trying to negotiate. But what I will tell you is, I organized a union when I was 23 years old, the United Rubber Workers of America in Angola, Indiana. I understand unions. It boils down to, I don't trust you, and you don't trust me. And what I said when we spoke with the unions, the police union and the fire union, Why? Why can't we talk without mistrust and deception? The promise that I made the unions, and this I can say publicly, if I am allowed to sit at the negotiation table, I'll be there. If I'm not allowed to sit at the negotiation table, I will be in the room. I will listen firsthand to the concerns and the problems that our fire department, police department face. I won't be getting it from somebody that was there. We have to work together. They know the situation. We all know the situation. We all want what's best for the city.
Thank you. We have a 30-second follow-up if you would like to take it. Mr. Sundquist.
No rebuttal.
Mr. Wilfong.
No, thank you.
And Councilman Liuzzo.
No, thank you.
Very good. Let's move along. The next question. There's been a lot of talking about improving transparency in city government. What is your definition of transparency? Where specifically is the transparency lacking? And what will you do to improve transparency for residents in the city? And we'll begin with Mr. Wilfong.
Transparency to me means that you see your public officials out and about, not just at actual ribbon cuttings. In the Wilfong administration, I'm going to have town hall meetings where individuals do not have to come to City Hall to come to a council meeting. I don't know if you've been to those or not, but those are very, very, sometimes can be very contentious. I think it's when you walk in there and half the people that are sitting there work for the government, do you really feel like you have the opportunity to speak? I'd like to have town hall meetings in each of the wards so you can actually come and see me, Dave Wilfong, and actually speak to him. I think that's important. I think that's kind of lacking. It seems like now we have a mayor that just pretty much stays in the glass palace. I think that mayor needs to be out. He needs to be a leader in the community. He needs to show himself during good times and bad, because we know there's going to be both. But I think as far as transparency goes, I think getting out, talking to the people, the everyday people, not just the tourists when they happen to show up, the people who live here, who pay taxes and might have a problem. I think that's the most important. Thank you.
Councilman Liuzzo.
Now, this is an area where I have some experience where my other two opponents don't. I've been on city council for the past 2 years. I see how the city works. Transparency, less executive sessions. Transparency, less decisions made behind closed doors. City council and the mayor are on the same line when it comes to the charter for governing the city. We're not above the mayor and we're not below the mayor. We are together. We do not discuss issues. We do not discuss plans. They are brought to us in the form of a resolution. And then the council votes up, or in my case, I vote down. But we need to run the city together the way it was set up in the charter. Out in the open, no questions that are not answered. Our citizens have the right to be heard and to be listened to, whether you live on a great street or you live on a poor street. You're all important. Your concerns matter.
Thank you. Mr. Sundquist.
I guess I take the idea of transparency a little different than my colleagues over here. As a former teacher, one of the biggest things we would have to do is use data of our students to help our students achieve different outcomes. And for me, making sure that our data for our city hall that is open and accessible to all of our people is really important. We should have information there about our finances. We should have information there about the payments we've made. We should have information there on how many times someone calls City Hall. That is something we do not have. We have been closed out to that. So my goal is to make sure we open up the data in City Hall, to also make sure we start to video stream all of our open meetings, so that if you can't get to City Hall at an inconvenient time, like when we hold open meetings at 2 o'clock on a Thursday, that you can actually see what's going on in the city. I also think that our website and our communication needs to be accessible to people that have disabilities. If you are hard of hearing or if you are blind, you should be able to have access to City Hall just as everyone else. And I'll tell you just a simple thing that makes me very crazy is making sure that we have accurate calendars on our website. I can't tell you, 1 week I actually used the online calendar in our city to go to any open meeting. And 1 week alone, that calendar had 5 appointments, and every time I went, all 5 had either been canceled or moved, and no one was ever notified. That is what we need to do to make sure our city is transparent.
All right, Mr. Wilfong, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to use it.
No, I'm good.
Councilman Liuzzo,
No, no rebuttal.
anything else to add, Mr. Sundquist, for 30 seconds?
No.
Very good. Let's move along, and we'll ask another question, this time from Terry Frank. Terry?
Thanks, Jason. We have heard so much about sharing services in recent years without giving up community identity. Where could the city share more services to help the bottom line and promote more intermunicipal cooperation? And that's to each one.
And we'll begin with Councilman Liuzzo.
We can share more services with the county when it comes to the construction season. All the equipment that we need and all the equipment that the county needs, it's not being used at the same time. We have not done a good job with that. Our community identity, we're all from Jamestown. If you go outside of the city and you go to another state and somebody asks you where you're from and you live in Bust-I, you say Jamestown. If you live in Frewsburg, you say Jamestown. We're all the greater Jamestown area. We have missed a big opportunity in these 20 years by putting up these artificial boundaries between our city and the rest of the community. What's good for Jamestown is good for everyone. What's good for Lakewood, Frewsburg, Falconer, Bust-I, Asheville is also good for Jamestown. We need to stop with these proprietary boundaries that we're the ones, because we're the big dog, and everybody else needs to just listen to what we have to say. We have to work together, and we can share services, and we will all be better off.
Thank you. Mr. Sundquist.
Well, I'd like to first recognize the fact that as a city and as an area, we have become regionalized. It's no more just Jamestown as a territory, right? There are neighboring towns and there are neighboring villages that we need to start to work together. We've always had the mentality that just because you have a dump truck in the town of Bust-I, that you can't bring it into the city of Jamestown and help us repair a road. That is the mentality that we need to end. We need to be working with our bordering municipalities. We need to be working with the county to start to share services. And oh, by the way, the easiest thing we could start to share is services with our public schools. There's no reason why the public schools need to go out and find another contractor to go plow snow during the winter, when our city streets are already plowing the sidewalks and plowing those areas. Let's share services where we can help in that regard. You know, I also want to talk about one of the biggest shared services that we haven't mentioned, which is the Board of Public Utilities, which provides utilities for a lot of parts of this region. And I'm in favor of actually expanding it. I think we are one region, and we need to make sure that we are able to extend our low-cost power and water and other utilities to our neighboring municipalities as well.
Thank you. Mr. Wilfong?
During the mayor's Smart City Capital Investment Program, he talked about and actually have approved the building of another DPW building. One of the things that seems kind of odd to me is that we're going to build infrastructure that we can't afford. It seems to me that we could venture into shared services. If you remember right, the Chautauqua County just built a new barn right outside of Faulkner. We could ask them to lease property from, or maybe rent from. And we all know that NACO Trucking is leaving and going to the Mason Industrial Park. There's going to be plenty of room down there in that empty building that maybe we could actually lease or buy. It doesn't make sense to me that in our business plan, we continue to invest in infrastructure in the city that we actually cannot afford. I think we need to take a look at other options, sharing, leasing, to become more vibrant and to become more business-like. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Councilman Liuzzo, anything to add for 30 seconds?
Well, I'm glad that my other two opponents agree that we need to be better to our neighboring communities, and we need to reach out and help each other out. That's exactly what we're supposed to do. That's exactly what we're going to have to do. We cannot be Jamestown standing on its own. We have to reach out and ask for help when we need it and give help when we can.
Mr. Sundquist.
Yes, I just want to respond to Mr. Wilfong. With all due respect, Mr. Wilfong, if you've ever been down to our actual central garage that we have, we do not have any more room that our 8 mechanics are working out of. We're servicing cars from all different divisions, and we're actually making money off of that. And one of the things is they don't have enough space because they're servicing our fire truck, our police cruisers, they're servicing our DPW trucks. They do need more space because they're storing things across the street in the lawn. We do need to be able to make sure that we have those facilities for them.
Thank you. Anything to add, Mr. Wilfong? 30 seconds.
Yeah. I'm not saying that the individuals down there aren't working hard. What I'm saying is the investment that the city's going to make to a new building is increasing to the infrastructure of the city of Jamestown. And then sooner or later, that particular building is going to need a new roof, and it's going to cost you more. It's going to need a heating system. It's going to cost you more. I'm not saying yes or no to is there a need. There certainly is a need. But why couldn't we, instead of working and storing stuff across the street, why isn't it down at the new barn, county barn? I'm talking about leasing space.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Let's move on to another question, and this one will be asked by Justin Gould. Justin?
Gentlemen, what can you do as mayor to combat illegal narcotics and the trend of heroin needles popping up on sidewalks around Jamestown?
All right, we'll begin with Mr. Sundquist.
I think we have to first recognize the fact that we have seen more drugs in our community than ever before, and we need to make sure that we take a stance on that, and it takes a community effort. I think the first thing for me when I see those types of things is we do want the community to assist in not only cleaning that up, but we also want to utilize our police force to have a more community effort, to have them be out in the community walking around and actually talking to folks, talking to neighbors. We've seen studies have shown time and time again when we have a police force that's out there walking around and knowing their neighborhood, you see less crime, you'll see less drugs and less needles. So my goal as mayor is to work with our police force to provide a community patrol, to get them out there. And oh, by the way, as I go door to door, there are communities that I knock on their doors, they're asking for this. They're asking to see those police officers that they know that are in their community. And that is one way that we're going to start to combat the crisis that we have with narcotics.
Thank you. Mr. Wilfong?
I currently represent District 11 in the city of Jamestown, which is also down on the north side in the numbered streets. And I cannot tell you the damage that drug addiction has done. It's ruined our community. It has ruined the neighborhoods, and we've got to do something about it. I certainly do agree with Mr. Sundquist when it comes to community policing. I think is the best thing. But there's a couple things I think that we need to do. We've got to have an active police force that's down there enforcing the laws. I also believe that if you need treatment in the city of Jamestown, you should get treatment. I absolutely do agree that. But one of the things that happens is when a drug dealer comes into your neighborhood, the very first thing he does is intimidate people. So the good people that are living on that street, they're afraid. So they don't dare come. They don't dare call the police. So the community policing aspect of that, I think, is the most important. And then the police know who should be there and who should not be there. So I think that's as important as it possibly could be. And I would also like to say that I think that the neighborhoods need to be strengthened by that relationship between the police department and the actual citizens.
Thank you. Councilman Liuzzo.
It'd be great to have more policemen walking the beat. We don't have policemen to walk the beat. We're down at our minimum right now. So where does this go? How are we going to take care of this? I keep talking about neighbors. I want to talk about the ward council. I'd like for the ward council to walk their wards and identify trouble areas. I find it very disheartening as a councilman at large when I go door to door, they don't know who their ward council is, the majority of the people. I'd also like to propose that each ward council, and we're going to have to do this together, gets a volunteer to make a neighborhood advocacy group. Here's our problem. If somebody calls and reports activity, illegal activity, pretty sure they're going to have a target on their back. But if you called your council person in that ward, and that council person had an anonymous neighborhood advocate to call, they would work with the police. The police would go by, knock on the door, and say, we've received a complaint. If this happens a number of times, the dealers will leave. So, and they'll move to another place. And then another ward, the police are familiar with that person or persons, say, we already saw you on the east side, now you're on the south side. You need to cease or desist because the next time we come, it'll be with a warrant. We can chase the dealers away. But dealers are here because we have users. So we have to help the users.
Thank you, Councilman Liuzzo. You'll have a chance for 30 seconds here, and we'll
Thank you.
move on to Mr. Sundquist. You do have 30 seconds if you'd like to rebut.
No rebuttal.
Mr. Wilfong?
No, thank you.
Mr. Liuzzo, anything else you want to add?
Yes. So the reason we have dealers is because there's a market. You have users. So now we get rid of the dealers by working together. Nobody knows who's the advocate is except that each ward council person. What do we do with the users? We have to find rehabilitation places for them. We have to help them get back on their feet. And the best way to do this is education to our young public school children and private school children. Bring the people that are in recovery to talk to those kids.
Thank you. Let's move on to another question. Let's talk about the budget. As we all know by now, the city is at its constitutional taxing limit. What are your plans for bringing property tax relief to residents during your 4-year term as mayor? We'll begin with Mr. Wilfong.
Well, I think one of the very first things we've got to do is we have to expand the tax base. And like I said, when I talked about Jamestown not being business friendly, we are still seeing businesses leave the city of Jamestown and go to the Mason Industrial Park. That's not good for anybody in the city of Jamestown. We've got to keep those individuals here. We've got to keep their jobs here. And I am very grateful to those individuals because they only left, and the people who work here locally will still be able to keep their jobs in the park. So one of the things I think we've got to do, and I've said this, and I'm sure this will cause a firestorm, is I believe that one of the things that are holding us back is we are clinging to the past. We have brownstone buildings that have been boarded up since I was a kid. I think we need to bulldoze those. Let's make room for success. Let's make room for jobs. Now, I'm sure you're aware that I'm a county legislator. I've said that before. There's a hops and barley initiative coming to Chautauqua County that's worth millions of dollars. They are here right now looking to invest. Do you know where they're not coming? They're not coming to Jamestown because we are not ready for business. And I think that's a tragedy. Thank you.
Councilman Liuzzo.
You've heard me talk about prefabricated homes. We have over 3,000 lots, or near 3,000 lots, that are empty in some of the worst neighborhoods in our city. The city code restricts building homes on those lots because the lots are too small. Nobody's going to build a $180,000 home in some of these neighborhoods. If we repurpose one of the factories and we build prefab homes, they're going to be safe, they're going to be green, they're going to be modern technology, they could even have solar panels. These homes could be constructed and sold and delivered for $60,000 to $70,000. Our housing stock is the oldest in New York State, or pretty close to it. I want to adhere to the housing codes that we have on the books. It might be cheaper for a landlord to knock down a house and put up one of these prefabs and rent that instead of spending $45,000, $50,000 to get their house up to code. And we are providing jobs that our citizens can do. These are not college degree jobs. These are jobs that normal people that we have in this area can do. The more houses we sell, the bigger the tax base. The bigger the tax base, the lower our taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Sundquist.
You know, it's no secret that we're a cash-strapped city, and I will tell you that we just need to get creative with the solutions we're trying to propose. Oftentimes we are stuck in the past, and we assume that what we're doing is the only thing that we can do. That's not the case. As you start to look across New York State, there are other cities that are starting to deal with this and are creating different fee models which they can then roll out to help increase revenue and decrease expenses. If we don't start to look to see what other places are doing, we're going to be stuck in the same wheel. Now, one of the biggest things we need to do is change the way we look at economic development in this city. We are still stuck on a development model that was based on 100 years ago, where the first thing you do is you go try to buy equipment for a factory floor. What businesses need, both existing businesses and startups, is working capital and payroll funding. So the first thing I want to do as mayor is look at our economic development policy and start to change it, because we need to start to move towards the future and actually create loans and grants that businesses can utilize and start up here in the city of Jamestown. On top of all of that, we have to market the incredible assets that we have. Low-cost power, the ability to pipe internet in every home and business, and an incredible and walkable, friendly city. That's what we need to start to focus on, to market, to encourage businesses to start up here in the city and grow our tax base.
Thank you. Mr. Wilfong, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to use it.
Yes, I would. I want to say that I think Mr. Liuzzo's thinking about the small homes is very, very out of the box, and I give him credit for that, because that, I think, is a new way of doing things, and I think he deserves credit for that. I do. My biggest concern about the housing stock is that I believe the housing stock is already affordable. The real key to that is, where are we going to work? That's the bottom line, I believe. I was right on time.
Councilman Liuzzo, 30 seconds.
I appreciate both Mr. Sundquist and Mr. Wilfong's vision of bulldozing and the buildings that we have and giving loans to new businesses. My question is, and my only hang-up is, where do we get the money to do these things? We have to work within our scope, okay? If I keep saying we have to start small to grow big. These big ideas are great. We're not there.
Mr. Sundquist, 30 seconds if you want to use it.
I would actually like to address both opponents. My expertise is actually in real estate law, and I've had the experience of working with developers, and I will tell you that it's one of the most difficult things to work with our development department to find the appropriate loans. I will say, Mr. Liuzzo, we do have loan funds that have significant amounts of money that businesses can tap into, but we have ridiculous requirements for some of them. And in terms of Mr. Wilfong, for the brownstones, there is more money out there in terms of state and federal grants to repair and restore buildings than to tear them down.
Again, you are listening or watching the 2019 City of Jamestown Mayoral Debates here at the Reg Lenna Center for the Arts. We're at about the midway point right now of our 90-minute long debate. And let's continue with another question from our panel, our media member panel. Terry Frank. Terry?
Thank you very much, Jason. While we're thinking about budgets, the city has been able to receive $1 million in supplemental state aid to help balance its budget for each of the past, I believe, 3 years. Is that something you would pursue in the future as well until the city is back on firmer financial ground? That's directed at each.
Thank you, Terry. Councilman Liuzzo.
We've become dependent on the state. It's just like getting your welfare check. We're never going to get ourselves on our feet until we stop taking welfare checks. We have to do this ourselves. We have to start building our city up on ourselves. 3 years in a row, we've gotten $1 million. 3 years in a row, we've been told we have a $300,000 surplus. We have a $400,000 surplus. We don't have a surplus. If it wasn't for that $1 million, we'd be $600,000 in the hole. We'd be $500,000 in the hole. That's false. And we're standing on loose ground. I want to break away from this check, this lottery that we're getting every year to balance our budget. We have to do this on our own. And we can do this on our own. But it's going to be difficult. And I find that we don't like to do difficult. We like to do what's easy. I'm not going to do what's easy. We're going to do what's difficult. We're going to bite the bullet, tighten our belts, and we're going to get out of this, just like you do in your home when you're having trouble paying your mortgage and your lights and your food and everything else. You find the way to do it. We have to find a way to do it on our own.
Thank you. Mr. Sundquist?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is that if the state's going to offer us $1 million check with no strings attached, I'm not going to be stupid enough to say no, right? That is something that we are going to take. But we have to realize that, yes, we do need to start to balance our budget and to not always focus on that. The reality is the state is providing us this additional $1 million is because over the course of several years, and I think about 10 years back, they cut our state aid. Jamestown was one of the few municipalities that got a larger cut than every other municipality in New York State. So as a way to fix that, New York State has been giving us additional funds in the form of grants to help us make up for the balance. Now, again, if the state's going to give us $1 million, I'm not going to say no. Absolutely not. I'll find a way to spend it. But you also have to understand, this is the way we have to try to get money for our city, right? We need to have a mayor that's going to be out there lobbying our state and lobbying our federal government to give us grants and other opportunities to make our city better.
Thank you. Mr. Wilfong?
I absolutely agree that if they're going to give us $1 million, I would take that money every year. And one of the things, too, when we talk about state aid, that's our money. We pay taxes. We pay sales tax. They're not giving us something. They're just giving our money back. We should have kept that money in the first place. One of the things I think that, like we were talking about, we've got $1 million for the last 3 years. They cut the state aid, but that's the kind of Band-Aid. That's what goes on in Albany. And I don't agree with it. So I certainly would take that money and invest it where I thought we needed it to be invested. So I think it's very important for us not to turn, I don't consider it a handout, I consider it a hand up. Let's take that money, but let's use it business-like. Let's use it for the good of the community and move us forward. Thank you.
Councilman Liuzzo, you have 30 seconds if you'd like to use it.
I do. Nobody gives you anything for nothing, and that includes Albany. If you think that $1 million is coming with no strings attached, then I have news for you. It is attached. You don't get it for free. Whoever holds the purse makes the rules. And who do you think has been making the rules in the city of Jamestown for the past 20 years? Albany. And if you think they're giving you $1 million because they like us, that's not why we're getting it. We have to pay for that $1 million. And we're paying for it by the condition of our neighborhoods and the condition of our city.
Thank you. Mr. Sundquist, 30 seconds.
Maybe I'm naive, but I'm pretty sure I want a mayor that knows how to play the game and actually can get money for their city.
Mr. Wilfong, 30 seconds. Anything to add?
No.
Thank you. Let's move on to another question then. This time we'll turn to Justin Gould. Justin?
Jason, thank you. Gentlemen, speaking of state aid, just this year, the National Comedy Center celebrated its one-year anniversary. What the current administration says is a testament to business growth and development here in downtown Jamestown. How do we bridge that growth and development to other areas throughout the city?
Thank you. We'll begin with Mr. Sundquist.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? What other areas are you discussing?
Other neighborhoods throughout Jamestown, outside of the greater downtown area.
So how do we develop those additional areas?
Yes.
Okay. I want to first off say that the National Comedy Center has brought a new wave of tourism to the city. And I think first and foremost, we need to recognize that that's great. We love to have that. It's increased our sales tax. It's done some great things for our city. But I often explain this as, the city is like a cake, right? We have our core business model, which is, the actual cake itself, and then the tourism is the icing on it. The icing's great, but we need to make sure that our cake is ready to go, which means that we need to start to redevelop our businesses and start to get sustainable business here in the city. and we've talked about it on and on. I am a huge proponent of going out there and having a development director that is actively recruiting tech companies and manufacturing technology companies to the city. We are primed for that development, and we could do that. Many people don't realize that we have a dark fiber ring around the downtown of our city that can provide high-speed fiber internet to almost every business in the downtown core. The BPU put that together. Now imagine if we extended that and we had the BPU start to build out and actually run a municipal broadband network at a lower cost than Spectrum or than Windstream. We could be able to attract these tech companies here without a flinch of the eye. That is what we need to start to do to develop our businesses and then also start to look at our neighborhoods and start to get aggressive with our code enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Sundquist. Mr. Wilfong.
When we talk about development downtown, it certainly is a great thing that I've seen down there, but I wanted to just caution people when I take a look at the saturation that I see that's going on down there with the food industry and the beverage industry. Those particular jobs, the hospitality industry itself, are very low-paying jobs. And if I could connect with what Mr. Liuzzo was saying, that type of job is not the type of job that people buy new cars. They don't buy new homes. Everybody wants to fix up their house, but in the fix up their homes. The hospitality industry does not afford them the money to actually do that. So we've got in bed with the hospitality industry, where I believe we need to get into manufacturing, light and or heavy, because I think that's what's going to sustain the buildup of the city of Jamestown, bringing back the neighborhoods, fixing our streets. We've got to start producing good things in the city of Jamestown, and we already do. Please don't send hate mail. But one of the things is we've got to have manufacturing jobs that pay decent wage. The hospitality industry itself historically does not. So I think it's going to be difficult for us to convert from hospitality into manufacturing. But that is the key. That's the way we have to go.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Councilman Liuzzo.
The Comedy Center, Reg Lenna, the Jackson Center, all very fine buildings, all very fine projects. How much taxes do they pay? None. If we're going to count on the sales tax that we get for 2 weeks in the summer during the Lucy Fest and the Comedy Center week, what about the other 50 weeks? If we are going to pursue tourism, and that's where we're going to get our money, then we have to do the whole area. We need to talk about Bust-Eye and Asheville for hunting during the fall. We need to talk about Lakewood and Mayville for sailing and boating during the summer. We need to talk about Peak and Peak for skiing in the wintertime. It has to be all of Chautauqua County. If we're going to market this as a tourism destination, it has to be year-round. We can't be selective and just say, oh, we have this comedy festival going on for 10 days in the summer, and the rest of the time, what are we doing with it? If we want tourism, we work together with the county, with the other communities, and we make it a tourist attraction place to come to.
Thank you, Councilman Liuzzo. Mr. Sundquist, do you have 30 seconds you'd like to use?
Yes, I want to first off say that I will acknowledge the fact that our downtown looks better than it has in the past 10 years. We've seen a lot of changes downtown. But when we talk about actually marketing our downtown, well, the county already does a ton of marketing at all the places that Mr. Liuzzo has mentioned. But you know what they don't spend a lot of money on? Marketing Jamestown. And that's something that we need to do a better job working with the county for, because we have the largest population center in this county.
Thank you, Mr. Sundquist. Mr. Wilfong, anything to add?
Yes, I would. A few years ago, a developer from the city of Jamestown came here for a tour, and he was touring the Barrow Street side of town, and I'm sure we know where that is, and that has fallen on some kind of hard times. My good friend said to me, very, very wealthy man, came here in a G5. I don't know if you know what that is. That's a private jet. He said to me, you know what you need to do here? You need to bulldoze these houses and run in some ski slopes. This gentleman, who's a very, very wealthy man, has been in the city of Jamestown for 20 minutes and has already seen opportunity here for us.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Let's ask another question, and I'll pose this question focusing on recent headlines in the news. Should funding be restored for the James Prendergast Library? If so, how much more funding should it receive? If not, what other ways can the city help out the library to ensure it can stay open and provide the same level of services to the community? And we'll begin with Mr. Wilfong.
Well, the financial situation at the library is just truly heartbreaking. There's no question about that. We all know the issue. The city's broke. They can no longer support the library. But I think we need to change the business plan for the library. And just hear me out. The business plan now is to wait for grants, wait for people to come and donate money. And I think that's the wrong way. I think we need to take this jewel and change it. Let's market it differently. There's a couple ventures that we could actually do at the library that I think we could make money. Yeah, and I did just say, could we make money with the James Prendergast Library? I think so. What if we were to take that footprint and scale that footprint down? We'd provide commercial space inside the library. We talked about food deserts in the city of Jamestown. Why don't we move a small mom and pop grocery store in there? That actual store itself would actually pay rent and help offset the costs associated with the library. Let's make the library a place where people want to go. How about you've been to the Barnes & Nobles down in Erie? It's a place where people come, read, they converse. They buy $8 coffees. We need to change the way that I believe that we are perceiving the library at this particular time. I think it's a jewel, there certainly is, but I think we could do more from it. And the only thing that's stopping us is us. We can change that. We can make things better there. But sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Councilman Liuzzo.
Our charter, from the beginning, states that we were going to support the library. This library was built in 1894. And here we are in 2019 with all this progress that we've made and all this foresight that we've had, and we're talking about closing this library. We're not going to close this library. A library is a learning institution, just like Fenton Museum is a learning institution. Why isn't the public schools helping us with this learning institution? Why hasn't that been explored? This benefits the students that go to school. It benefits the adults that are going to school. We have the largest library in the county, and we are at the brink of shutting the door. We have to find a way to keep the library open. When you went from $350,000 a year to $100,000, and now down to $50,000, and now we're talking about, I don't know if we can buy them a cup of coffee at $8 a cup, okay, because we're so broke. No, we have to find a way, wherever it is, to help the library stay open. And they have to help themselves. We can't do it all. They have to do their fundraising also. This is important to the city. We can't close the library.
Mr. Sundquist.
I think when you look at successful cities, you will all notice that they have a strong central library. And it is very important to me that we have a functioning library. But we've seen the decline in funds that have been provided to the library over the course of several years. And I have said both to the library exec director as well as to the board that my goal is to make sure that the city partners with the library to apply for additional grants and additional funding. In fact, we've even talked about doing potential matching funding. If the library is able to raise so much, we can have the city try to kick in a matching amount. Now, this is our biggest thing, is we need the library to not only to work towards raising its own money from the community, because we must remember the library is actually a private, not-for-profit association. It was never created under the city, but the city has provided funding for it for many years. I think the city needs to continue funding it, and I would like to see more funding for it. But we also need the library to engage the community and raise money for it as well.
Anything to add, Mr. Wilfong? 30 seconds.
Well, yes. I better talk fast. We've got to change. We've got to change that business model. because it's just not our library that's having trouble. Libraries all across the nation are. And if we sit back and we talk about grants and we talk about we're going to go out and raise money, 4 years from now, it's going to close. It can't continue to run on the backs of the taxpayers. We have got to find a different funding source for that. And I think if we could move into a different direction, more business friendly, I think it could happen.
Councilman Liuzzo, anything to add?
Just briefly, everybody uses this library, not just Jamestown. Lakewood, Bustye, Falconer, I mean, everybody comes to the library. This is the biggest library in the county. There has to be a way that they can also help us maintain the library. If I know it's James Prendergast free library, but somebody's paying for it, and we have to find a way to have them help pay for it. Maybe if you live out of the town, you have to pay some kind of a user fee. I don't know. But it's all everybody's responsibility.
Mr. Sundquist, anything else to add?
I just want to point out that the library is actually part of a larger system. It's a central repository that the state has designated to keep it open and free to not only our municipality, but all of the bordering municipalities. They're part of a larger system. So we can't legally actually charge other municipalities for its use.
Thank you. Again, you're listening to the 2019 debate featuring the 3 candidates for mayor of Jamestown, live from the Reg Lenna Media Arts Studio in downtown Jamestown. Our program is being broadcast live on WRFA LP 107.9 FM in Jamestown, New York. That is our legal ID, just so you know. We may have time for more questions from our panel, but we did want to give the candidates an opportunity to pose questions to one another if they would like. So we've now reached the part of our program when we will invite the candidates to ask questions of one another. The candidate responding to the question will have up to 90 seconds to respond, and then the candidate asking the question will have 30 seconds to rebut or follow up, and then we'll give one final 30 round to the person who the question was posed toward. Hopefully that makes sense, but follow my lead and we should be all right. With that being said, let's begin with giving Mr. Sundquist an opportunity. Do you have a question for either Mr. Wilfong or Mr. Liuzzo or both?
I have a question for both.
Go ahead.
So many of us realize that we utilize technology in our daily life for almost everything that we do, whether that's banking or whether that's being able to make our life more efficient. I wanted to ask both of these candidates, what ways do you plan on using technology to make our city more efficient and more cost-effective for our residents? Let's begin with Mr. Wilfong.
Well, one of the things I think that we need to do, especially in the development department, is we've got to streamline communications, I think, between property owners, and when I say property owners, I mean landlords, and the city. For some reason, we have got an abundant group of people who believe that every landlord is bad in the city of Jamestown, and they're not. I think that those groups should be together, and they should be communicating on the condition of their property. They should be meeting on especially tenants who actually go to these houses and destroy these houses. That communication, and it also needs to be incorporated with the city. I think that we need to reach out to those people to make that more of a transitional, what's the word I'm thinking here? Of a group that gets together. We have code enforcement, we have the Landlords Association, and we actually have the police if we think that if there's drug abuse going on, or maybe spousal abuse or something like that. We need to reach out, I think, with technology to make sure that those communications are open. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. We may get back to you, but let's move along and give Mr. Liuzzo 90 seconds to respond to the question. Councilman Liuzzo?
I know how to use some of this. I can't use it all to its capacity. I'm not that skilled in technology. I know that I don't have to send somebody across the states to market. You can do that on a computer. And I know to implement technology that's useful for the city, I have to go to people that understand technology. I don't propose to know all the answers, and when I don't know something, I'll find out. And I know there are people that are tech savvy. I know there are people that give me the ideas and say this is how we expand it. I can't do it for you. I can only do so much on this.
Mr. Sundquist, do you have a follow-up? 30 seconds if you'd like. A follow-up to the question that you asked.
Nope.
Okay, let's move along to the next candidate who can pose a question, and that would be Councilman Liuzzo. You can ask a question to Mr. Wilfong or Mr. Sundquist, or both. Do you have a question?
I do, and it's the same question to both. Why are you running for mayor?
Okay, let's start with Mr. Wilfong.
Well, as, I think you can tell that I'm probably older than most of the people sitting on this table. I wanted to give back to my community. Like I say, I've been in the county legislature for 5.5 years, 6 years. I've been trying to do my best at the county level for the city of Jamestown. As I get a little bit older and I think of my community, the city of Jamestown is not the place that I grew up in. Believe it or not, when I was a kid, and that was a long time ago, people came to the city of Jamestown to work. I've always wanted to run for the mayor of Jamestown. I just thought I would do it when I was retired. But when Mr. Teresi decided not to run, I just said I would throw my hat in. I think it's important that we are able to reach across the political lines to get things done, and we are also able to communicate as a community. Because I'm going to face it, folks, November 5th, somebody up here is going to be happy, and some couple people are not. I mean, I get that. But that's the game, and that's the way we play. And I'm not going to have ill feelings if it's not Dave Wilfong. Matter of fact, I pledge my support to any of the candidates who are the mayor, because I think that's what we need to do in our community. We don't have time to splinter our community because of petty political things. I think it's time that we move forward as a group and don't let us hold us back. Oh, that was perfect.
Thank you.
That was perfect.
Mr. Sundquist, you also have 90 seconds.
Thank you. You know, I, as an attorney, I came back to the city of Jamestown and I invested in our city. I'm a young professional that said, you know what, Jamestown is where I want to be. I've been to other cities, I've been to other places, and you know what? I still came back home. And to me, we are at a crossroads in this city where we can either start to grow and move forward and really develop what we have, or continue to be stuck in the past. And I was not willing to allow anyone keep us stuck in the past. I'm running for mayor because I truly believe that if we bring some new energy, some new leadership, and some fresh ideas to our city government, and we have people that are willing to invest in what we're doing here, we can move the city forward. Now, I'm not taking the role just because I think it'll look good or it's a political move. I make more as an attorney than I will as mayor of the city. So for me, this is about the care of every single person that is a resident of our city, because I believe when we have the right people in City Hall, we will move our city forward.
Councilman Liuzzo, do you have a follow-up? Or a rebuttal?
Yes, and I'm going to address both of them in 10 seconds. We've had the same mayor for 20 years. Anybody could have stepped up and challenged the mayor if they felt that the city was going in the wrong direction. I'm the only candidate who was going to challenge the mayor. The second thing is, my young colleague, you ran for Congress when you got out of school, which is fine. And you should follow your dreams. And if your dream is to climb politically, that's good too. It's okay.
30 seconds, Mr. Wilfong, if you would like to respond.
Probably not in 30 seconds, no. I guess that's not that often.
Mr. Sundquist, you do have 30 seconds to respond.
I'm not sure what to say. I've been out of school for quite some time. But I do appreciate that, and it's not about rising to the political ranks. Right now, it's about what's best for the people of the city of Jamestown.
Okay. Mr. Wilfong, you have an opportunity to ask a question of either of your opponents, either Councilman Liuzzo or Mr. Sundquist, or both. Do you have a question?
I do, and I'm just going to ask them both, and they can answer any way they'd like. What is your opinion on the 2020 city budget?
Let's begin with Councilman Liuzzo.
Of course you would. I've looked the budget over. there's a lot of work that I believe has to be done with it. To me, it looks like a wasp nest. You know how it's all nice and wrapped in paper? Go ahead and pick it up and see what happens. I will be asking for this budget to go back and have some more work on it. Any one of us that ends up with this budget is going to get stung.
Thank you. Mr. Sundquist?
I've also gone through the budget in detail, and I would say that the number one thing to recognize is that there's not a lot of wiggle room to keep what we have. So the current budget basically says we're keeping everything the same. When you talk about a new administration, some of those things will change. So some of those changes to the budget will have to happen when a new council comes in. But as it is right now, if we want to keep everything the same in the city, that budget's the only way that's going to do it.
Thank you. Mr. Wilfong, anything else you want to add for those final 30 seconds you were allotted?
No, I'm good with that.
Oh, let's move along then. So there's good news and better news. The good news is we're moving faster than we had thought, which means the better news is we have more questions we can ask. So with that being said, do any of the candidates have any other further questions for one another? If not, we'll shift our attention back to our panel, and I'm sure Terry Frank is waiting in the wings with another question. So do any of you have another question you would like to ask of one another?
No, I'm sure Terry has a whole bunch over there that he's waiting to sting
Chomping
with.
at the bit.
Oh,
here.
I got a
agree.
couple.
With that being said, let's go back to our panel, and we'll go to Terry Frank on WJTN. Terry, do you have another question?
Yes, sir. The mayor recently submitted the Smart City Capital Investment Program proposal, and that included the possibility of a new ambulance facility and 2 new ambulances to help service the community since UPMC Chautauqua has curtailed service. The city considered such a move many years ago to get into the ambulance service. Should it go all in now?
Let's begin. 90 seconds for Councilman Liuzzo.
There was a study and there was a plan many years ago that is on the shelf collecting dust. I have yet to see it. Can we go all in right now? Not with the proposals that were presented to us. Each one of those endeavors was going to put us in the hole, $400,000 to $500,000, whether we took care of it or it was private. We can't have a venture where it's going to cost us $400,000 to run an ambulance service. I need to look at that other proposal. From my understanding, it was viable and it was running in the black. For whatever reason, it was scrapped as soon as, very soon in our mayor's term when he first started. Other than that, can we go all in? We can't do anything all in, not even the smart city that he proposed to us. Should we be going all in? This was something that should have waited for the next administration, not handed to us on its way out the door.
Thank you, Councilman Liuzzo. Mr. Sundquist?
I want to just first off say that, as a city, we need a viable ambulance service. That's first and foremost. And what we are seeing is a service All-Star, which is out of service more than it is in service. And that's a huge problem. I've been vocally opposed to us recreating an ambulance service with the city when we can't even make money from our current ambulance service under the fire department. We're not billing when we have the ability to bill, which other cities are doing. And that's completely, that's not okay with me. How dare us say, let's go pay people lower costs and let's start our own service when we're not even taking care of our own ambulance service under the fire department. So for me, I'm actually a big advocate of working with private companies that's going to dedicate at least 2 ambulances here in the city of Jamestown. One for in-city runs and another for out-of-location patient transports. We need to be working to find a private provider that will do it instead of saying, hey, as a city, let's do it all ourselves and hope we make money. The reality is all of the proposals that we have had and have seen from the mayor's office shows us running a city ambulance service in the red.
Thank you, Mr. Sundquist. Mr. Wilfong.
Well, I've had the great opportunity to have my good friends from the fire department at my house rescuing me and my daughter within the last few months. So believe me, when you say that those services are viable, they certainly are. I couldn't tell you how grateful I was when they came and rolled into 39 Norton Avenue. So when it comes to supporting them, I certainly do. When it comes time to have the actual 4 options that the mayor put forward, like Mr. Sundquist said, I don't believe they're viable. I think there's some huge issues. And one of the issues I think that the Jamestown firemen have pointed out very, very eloquently is that we're not billing. I think that All-Star has got to step up. I will tell you that in the budget that's coming up at the county level, there is a proposal there to station another fly car in the South County. That should hopefully relieve some of the calls that the Jamestown Fire Department is actually taking. Or will they be absorbed into the All-Star group? We're hoping that that'll alleviate some of the stress that we see on our volunteer fire departments also. So when it comes to, I'd like to just comment what Mr. Liuzzo said. I think that that is something that we should have went to the mayor that's coming in, and we should actually take a look at all of those options. The most important thing is that we provide ambulance service for the people in the city of Jamestown.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Councilman Liuzzo, do you want to add anything for 30 seconds?
No, I think we all agree that we can't jump all in right now.
Mr. Sundquist
There's nothing for me to add.
and Mr. Wilfong.
No, I think you're good.
All right, we do have time probably for one more question, so let's go one more time to Justin Gould for our final question from our media members. Justin?
Jason, thank you. Gentlemen, Mayor Sam Teresi has one of the longest tenures as mayor in city history. What do you like about his legacy? What do you not like about his legacy? And how will you be different?
Let's begin with Mr. Sundquist.
One of the first things I will say is something I said earlier, which is our downtown is probably looking better than it has in several years. And I think a lot of that has been a focus of Mayor Teresi to improve our downtown and to try to revitalize what we have. And so with that being said, I do applaud the work that he has done. He's been very diligent about that. He's also been very good at advocating for our city in Albany, which is something we absolutely need to do going forward. No matter who the mayor is, that is a huge component. Being able to go and lobby to get funding and to get the governor to pay attention to Jamestown. That's what we need in the next mayor going forward. And I do applaud Mayor Teresi for the work that he has done. For me, I'm looking towards the future. I want to see Jamestown grow, and I want to see a future where we can not only be a technology hub, but we also have a city hall that is welcoming, friendly, and open, so that no matter who calls, no matter what we are trying to do, we respond to those calls, we answer them appropriately, and we make sure that we communicate to every single resident here in the city of Jamestown.
Thank you, Mr. Sundquist. Mr. Wilfong.
I would also agree with Mr. Sundquist. Sam Teresi has done a fantastic job as mayor. Now you might think, oh my God, that guy's a Republican saying that. Sam Teresi has been the duly elected mayor in the city of Jamestown for 20 years. And that deserves some kind of praise, and that actually deserves some kind of applause. Sam has made some decisions that I wouldn't make, but I certainly respect him for what he has done and really what he has put up with. All of us on the stage here want to be mayor, and November 5th, one of us will be. But I give you about April 30th, and he'll be the most hated man in the city of Jamestown. Won't take long. Sam has gone out of his way to put his family first. I know he has because I'm an elected official myself. Do you imagine missing birthday parties and family get-togethers because of your commitment to the well-being of the city of Jamestown? One of the things I want to say is that I don't think that that should happen again. I think we, in a Wilfong administration, I think we need to move toward term limits. But that's not singling out Sam Teresi. I graduated with Sam. Sam's a great man, and I don't think he gets the respect that he should. Because whether we agree with him or not, you can go ahead and judge, but please don't judge the man. He's a great father. I'm sure he's a great husband. And let's remember him for that.
Thank you, Mr. Wilfong. Councilman Liuzzo?
Well, you've gotten a couple different takes here. Sam has given us great parks. He's also raised our taxes every year since he's been in office, and that's 20 years. The only reason we didn't get him raised is because we're at a cap, but he found a way to do the tax levy, so he still raised the taxes. I'm not gonna attack the man's character. I would never attack anybody personally. But the way he's run this city, it's been Sam's way or no way. I've been on council for 2 years. I know what I'm talking about. That's not the way I'm gonna run the city. The city is gonna be run by the council and by the citizens. It is our job to serve you. It is not our job to be protected from you. And that is how this city has been run. How do we not get sued? How do we not pay this? No, we're here to serve you. I will serve as your mayor, as your best neighbor. I'm talking about neighbors, it starts at the top. And I want my council to be active in serving the community.
Thank you, Councilman Liuzzo. Mr. Sundquist, 30 seconds if you'd like to add anything else.
Nothing further.
Mr. Wilfong, 30 seconds.
No, thank you.
And Councilman Liuzzo, anything for 30 seconds?
One thing. It's pretty obvious that Albany is very important to the city of Jamestown. And one of my opponents thinks that he's the one to get it done because he's on the same party. We have to do this on our own. If we don't walk away from the help that we're getting all the time, and we don't understand that they're the ones that are controlling how we spend our money and how we grow our city, we're never going to pick ourselves up. We have to do this on our own.
Thank you. And let's conclude with closing statements. We're going to go in the order, reverse order of the opening statements. So that means that Mr. Sundquist will go first. 2 minutes for a closing statement. Mr. Sundquist?
Well, again, want to thank WRFA and WJTN and Western New York News Now for having us here today. This is always a great time when we can talk directly to people and to answer the questions that are on people's minds as we go into not only early voting for the first time we've had here in New York, but also into the election day, which is not too far away. I am excited for the future that we have here in the city of Jamestown. We're at an incredible, we're at the cusp of growth here, and we need to be able to push it forward, to engage as many people as possible, and to start to move our city into the future. I've talked about my 3 priorities as mayor, one of them being creating a city for the future, being able to focus on new economic development and creating Jamestown as a technology hub. I've talked about supporting our neighborhoods and strengthening our initiatives, holding our slumlords accountable, and ensuring that we support our residential property owners. And I've also talked about tackling our financial burdens. Make no mistake, we do have challenges ahead we need to face. And we've all talked about the issues with the budget. But we need to get creative with our solutions and work with and see what other cities are doing that have gotten them away from the same position that we are in. Now, this city has always gotten creative when times have gotten tough, and I am confident that the city of Jamestown will once again get creative to solve its challenges ahead. But the one thing that we know is that for the first time in 20 years, we will have a new administration, and that only happens when people get out and vote. So grab your friends, grab your neighbors, grab your coworkers, and drag them to the polls on November 5th, or if you're out about early, anywhere from October 26th through November 3rd.
Councilman Liuzzo.
Most of you already know who you're going to vote for. There might be 1 or 2 that haven't made up their mind. And those are probably the 2 people I'm going to be talking to. You have 2 choices. You can either vote for for a party, or you can vote for a third party. The most productive years of the city of Jamestown was between 1938 and 1964. It was run by six third-party mayors during those 26 years. In 1964, went Democrat because John F. Kennedy was killed in 1963. The whole country went Democrat. We love that young president. You have to be bold. You have to understand that the only way that we can stop the slide that the city's been in is to take bold steps. Break the party line. Break the political party. I'm not asking you to vote because I don't have anything better to do or because I retired. I'm asking you to vote because I care. That's what drives me to be here. I care about our city, I care about our residents, I care about what I've seen and the decline that I've seen in this city. I don't want people to give up and say we're all the same. We're not all the same. But the choice is yours. I don't have a political party hitter, a big party hitter from the party to come down and say vote for him because you're going to lose money. Don't be scared or intimidated. We can do this. It's going to take all of us, but we can do this.
Thank you, Councilman Liuzzo. And Mr. Wilfong, you have the final word for the candidates.
Well, I'd like to thank WRFA for this meeting tonight, and I want to thank you folks again for coming. I actually do believe what Mr. Liuzzo said, that most of the people here tonight probably came here and they figured out who they were going to vote before they came, which is fine. One of the things I want to just touch base with, I just want to make sure that if you take anything away from here tonight, let's talk about the city of Jamestown and putting it business first. Let's bring back manufacturing. Let's change the way we think about doing business in the city of Jamestown. It's the only thing that's keeping us back is what we have considered unsurmountable. We can do something about the James Prendergast Library. If we continue on the same business path, we're going to wait for grants that might fall through, and it could actually close, instead of acting now. And that's the thing. We've got young people in the audience. Let's act now. Let's push forward. Let's prepare for success. Because success is here. We're just not ready for it. We're not business friendly. We don't have a place for the hops and barley initiative to come. That's right around $25 million we're not in the game for. That's sad. Let's move from the past into the future, and let's make Jamestown proud again. I want to thank all of you again for coming. Thank you.
And thank you. And that will do it for our program tonight. Again, we want to thank our three candidates for mayor for taking part: David Wilfong, Eddie Sundquist, and Andy Liuzzo. And thank you to our host and presenter for tonight, the Reg Lenna Center for the Arts, along with Western New York News Now, WJTN, and WRFA. Our technical producer for tonight's show is WRFA General Manager Dennis Drew. Technical director provided by Don Gould. Audio and visual consulting provided by Ed Tomasini. Venue and hospitality services provided by Stephanie Prin, Heather Felton, and Jay Peterson. Timekeeper, Nate DeTanto. A wonderful job, Nate. Thank you. And thank you again to WJTN News Director Terry Frank and Western New York News Now Director Justin Gould. Thank you, gentlemen. Don't forget, the early voting in Chautauqua County begins on October 26th, and Election Day is on Tuesday, November 5th. For more information, contact the Chautauqua County Board of Elections or visit votechautauqua.com. I'm WRFA Public Affairs Director Jason Sample saying thank you for listening and watching, and don't forget to vote. Good night.